Hello and welcome everyone to our webinar on the future of mobility. My name is Wika. I will be your host for today's webinar. First of all, thank you very much for all of our speakers who have been joining us today and for all of our attendees for attending the webinar. We are very proud to have three great speakers. Each speaker has a unique and different background, which will be very interesting to see. We will have Mr. Dirk-Jan ter Horst, the co-founder of DriveLah. For the first speaker, and the second speaker is Mr. Devi van die Haar as the marketing director of TURNN. And the third speaker is Mr. Paul Roymans, founder of Tranzer and Links. Mr. Dirk-Jan ter Horst is the co-founder of DriveLah. He is an entrepreneur with an international experience in combining marketing and tech in the automotive and construction industries. Dirk-Jan is passionately building out DriveLah with an ambition to be the largest in Asia Pacific in the smart mobility space. Our third speaker is Mr. Devi van die Haar, is the marketing director of TURNN. Mr. Devi is responsible for all the design, communication, and other brand-related topics for the mobility as a service platform TURNN. TURNN is the complete MAAS in the Netherlands. He has extensive experience within the Dutch mobility ecosystem, from running his own mobility startup to his involvement in one of Europe's leading mobility integrators. Our third speaker is Mr. Paul Roymans, is a founder of Tranzer and Links. Making the world a better place to live is Mr. Paul's motto to get out of bed. He sees public transport as the backbone to keep cities flowing. That's why he started Tranzer. Tranzer aggregates tickets from public transport operators worldwide into one platform and makes all tickets digital. Whether it is a ticket for a train, a bus, or a metro, you can buy it by your mobile phone in any app. Next, allow me to explain our agenda today. Each speaker will do a presentation of about 10 minutes, sharing their experience, knowledge, and latest insights. And during the presentation, if you have any questions, please type them in the question box in your Zoom control panel. We will answer the questions at the end of after all the presentation. Okay, now without further ado, we will turn the time over to our first speaker, Mr. Dirk-Jan ter Horst from DriveLah.
Thank you for the intro. Yes, I'd like to talk about DriveLah and what we do in our, let's say, part in mobility and the future of mobility, because there are a couple of things that are really changing in the world and also here in Asia when it comes to mobility. So there are always a couple of trends, like when we think about electrification of vehicles, if we think about autonomous vehicles, but also if you look at how many cars we currently have in the world and how many cars we expect to have in the future, and also the way we're using it. So the thing that we want to address, and that we think is, because we think it's very unsustainable, is that there is a one person, one car mentality, right? So people have one car, they buy a car and they drive it. Most of the time they drive it with one person. And the disturbing part is that cars are mostly parked somewhere because you're using it just for a limited amount of time, and most of the time it's parked using up space, right? So what we see is that, let's say from an individual level, cars actually are becoming more and more financially unattractive. The cost of ownership for cars is high. Governments, they want to do something about it and make parking more expensive, make petrol more expensive, and basically want to tax cars as well. So we see it's financially unattractive. It gets more and more financially unattractive for individuals. From a society point of view, getting more cars is also bad for the environment. You use resources very inefficiently, and the congestion itself And now, because of COVID, maybe that's a little bit less. But if you look at places like Jakarta or Bangkok, it is just really bad. And you can imagine if more people get more money and more people want to buy a car, it only gets worse. So what we basically see happening globally is that there is a shift happening from car ownership to usership. So instead of buying a car, owning a car, people still have the need for mobility, but you can also do that by just paying for what you use. And we see this trend is happening globally. It's happening, and it's mainly driven by the younger generation, by Generation Y, by millennials. They don't per se want to own cars or don't own assets. They just want to use it and pay for it. Now, on the other hand, we also see that cities, different cities, they also want to discourage car ownership. So here on the right-hand side, we see a couple of examples like Oslo or Paris or also Singapore. Cities want to reduce ownership because of the reasons mentioned before. Now, how do you address this demand? You can do it in different ways. But the route that Drivela has chosen is to do it in a very asset-light manner, just like Airbnb in a way, where we are making use of idle cars. So what I mentioned just earlier is cars are parked most of the time. In fact, it's 95% of the time a car is parked somewhere. And what we do is we bring together those people that have a car and not using it with people that need a car. We've done this quite long already, or many trips. We've done over 20,000 trips in Singapore alone, and we've done it in the last 2 years. Now, as mentioned, we do this in the way that we don't own any cars, like Airbnb, but there are a whole bunch of companies that do that in a very different way. They address the demand for flexible mobility by buying a fleet of cars and then renting them out. Now, the ones here at the bottom left, probably most of you have heard of. Those are traditional car rental companies. They do that. They buy a fleet of cars, they rent it out. Now, what we also see on the top left is that you have a couple of car sharing companies, and they do the same thing. So they do it a bit more convenient for consumers. They have more different locations. They can rent out cars per hour, or by the hour, or by the day. But still, they own the fleet of cars. So we, on the other hand, Drivela, we are also making use of technology. You can access cars keyless, but we don't own them. So it has a couple of advantages. The way we do it, it is definitely much more affordable because people, they've already paid for their insurance, they've paid for road tax, they have calculated with their depreciation of the car, and they can just rent it out when they don't need it. Therefore, we see generally that cars are more affordable when rented out on us. It's also very convenient because you can have many different cars any time of the day, wherever they are. Your neighbor can rent out their car and you can take it. So it's very convenient. Insurance, we take it on us. So let's say during the trip, everything is comprehensively insured, both the car, third parties, and the guest and the people that are driving along with him or her. And we use technology. We have devices that we install in cars that can provide keyless access. So any time of the day, even if it's the middle of the night, you can just access the car and drive off. So as mentioned, and here is a different overview or a schematic overview of how those different types of companies, what the differences really are. Now, what I mentioned is most important thing is the assets, they are not on our balance sheet. So they are still from the car owner. They rent it out, and therefore the business model that we have is very scalable. And we see that with Airbnb itself, it can grow super fast. The second thing is that if you look at it from a rental duration, we can offer anything from hours, days, months, any time of the day. We don't have our own location. You can pick it up anywhere, and also an unlimited number of car models that you have. And the price, again, is lower. So what we've done in the last 18 months, we've grown to $2.5 million US, and we're still growing 20% month on month. So it is still growing rapidly. And here's what we see how we've done our growth. So we've done it in a very efficient way. For every dollar that we spent, we generated $2.5 in incremental annualized revenue. So there is a massive market that is waiting out there to be disrupted, and that is the traditional car rental market. 90% of the flexible mobility market is serviced by the traditional car rental players, and in Asia Pacific, excluding China and India, this is a 15 billion market and expected to grow to 40 billion. So we have launched outside of Singapore. We started in Singapore. We've also launched in Australia under the name DriveMate. What for us is important is that when borders open up again, then people that have used DriveLine in Singapore and they travel to Australia, for example, they can just rent a car as easily as that and just drive off, and also the other way around. So our plan is right now to scale another 10x in the coming 18 months, and we do that by continuing our growth in Singapore, do a couple of things on product expansion. We are in the shared mobility space, so cars is just one part of it, and we want to expand into a couple of new markets. Now, to do that, we raised money, and just today, and we see the data today as well. Today, DriveLine was also in the news for that, because we just completed our funding round, and that means right now we can again finally focus on continuing our growth again. So that is great news. And so for everyone that's here on the call, and if you are in Singapore, obviously at the moment, I'd like to offer you credits to try it out and see how it works and how convenient it is to sometimes drive around without having to own a car, and do it in a much more efficient, sustainable, but also more affordable way. Here you get $50 extra credits if you use this link. So I'm open to any questions you have.
Wow, thank you very much, Mr. Dikian, for your presentation. And for sure, if we are now in Singapore, we will for sure wanted to try DriveLah and go around in a sustainable way, and yeah, without having any transport, which is very good for our future. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, sure.
Yes, sure.
So is your hardware installed also in these privately owned vehicles, Dirk-Jan?
Yes, and not in all. So the car owners, they are always in control. So they could say if they want that, yes or no. I can show such a device. Okay. We have some of those devices here. We basically have those devices, and what we ask the person is, do you want to have this device installed in your car? It has a couple of advantages. Then we basically say you can provide keyless access to other people. Also, we track where the car is going. So we know at any point in time where the car is. And the other benefit for the car owners is that also in our search algorithm, we place them higher up the search. So demand for their cars goes up if we put this in the car. So therefore we let the car owners decide. And we have around 10% currently of our car fleet with these devices. But our intention is to have many more of those. But currently it's around 10%.
Yeah. Are you doing something with that data that you generate, or is it?
Yes, we do, and maybe we do that. So currently, you can do many different things with the data, because we know how people are using the platform. We know where they drive, how fast they drive. We can make a driver profile in that sense. We also know car health data, like is the battery dead, or is it still good, or anything wrong with the car. Now, what we currently do is we look at driving behavior, and based on the driving behavior, we make a risk profile of a driver. And based on that risk profile, we price the trip. So it could be that if two people are trying to rent the same car, it could be that the price is different for both people.
Okay, interesting. I can imagine you can have very different risk patterns across countries, of course, because Singapore probably it's manageable in terms of risk, but in different countries it's a totally different scenario. So I can imagine you generate very, very interesting data, which you can maybe also use in terms of PR, of course. That's nice.
Yeah. We need to see that over time. Right now we do this, but there are many different possibilities with the data itself. That's right.
Yeah. I think you get this question more. Sorry, that's my last question for now. But in terms of insurance, how do you manage it, especially when you offer the possibility to rent the vehicle for an hour?
Yeah, so we make it very simple. For everyone that rents the car, everything is comprehensively insured. And what we basically do is we have a deal in Singapore. We work with Tokyo Marine and with NTUC Income. And what we basically do with those two parties is every trip on the platform is insured by them, right? And that means that the primary insurance of the car owner is not going to be used. So also, in case there is any accident, and by the way, the accident rate is very low, but if there is an accident, then the no claim discount for the car owner will not be impacted because we use our own insurance.
Okay. Yeah. That I can imagine that it can be a worry for car owners.
Yes.
All right. Vika, we have a number of interesting questions in the Q&A. I want to especially ask the last one. So that the ratio of making your decisions into the cities you want to expand to. So you are going to expand to Kuala Lumpur, Hong Kong, Sydney, Melbourne. Why are you choosing that specific path in these cities?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the key thing is we have a couple of variables that we look at. Obviously, one is very important is the size of the market. So size of market is an important factor. The second thing is, and the size of the market, we look at the car rental market. So in the end, we try to take share from the traditional car rental players, which normally own 90 or do service, let's say they have a market share of 90+% in each market. So that is one thing. The second thing is, let's say the land of the law of the land, sorry. That means how is the risk profile? Do people follow the rules, or is it going to be a nightmare in terms of operations, right? So we also look at that as a very important factor. The third is that you look at public transport. How good is it? Now in Singapore, it's a bit of an odd case because public transport is really good, and still we see car sharing booming, but that's because the percentage of households that have a car is not high, right? It's limited. And therefore, there is still an opportunity. If you look at Sydney or in Melbourne, where we are right now, more people have a car, but public transport is not so good. So in the end, people rely on cars. And if you go from one city to the other and you need another car, then that's where DriveLa comes in. So yeah, there are different variables, but basically it's size of market, willingness, law of the land, and public transport.
Okay, great. That makes a lot of sense. Vika, are there other questions you would like to ask, or shall we continue to the next speaker?
Okay, thank you, Johan, and thank you, Dirk-Jan, for your presentation and for your answers. And we do have more questions, but I guess we can proceed after the presentations, and we can do an open discussion with this.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Thank you. So we will continue with our second speaker, Mr. Devi van Lihaar, the Marketing Director of TURNN.
Hello, that's me. Although
Yes.
my name is also present on Paul, his screen, I see. But I'm Devi for all of you. Let me share my screen with you guys. Here we go. Okay, and full screen. I hope the screen is now visible for all of you.
Yes.
Great.
Great.
Let me see. I wanted to start with a short introduction of our team. Of course, the team of TURNN is bigger than what you see here, but this is our management team. We are 5 experienced mobility experts, let's call it that, each with our own specialty. My name is Devi van der Haar. I'm responsible for all marketing and communications within TURNN. And we, as TURNN, have been part of ICT group since let's say 1.5 years, and we are working quite hard on creating a new MaaS platform, mobility as a service platform, in the Netherlands. What we see in especially business mobility is a couple of trends. We see a lot of congestion in the Netherlands, so a lot of cities, and around these cities, it takes a long time to travel to your work, from your work to your appointments by car mainly. We see a changing mobility market. A lot of companies, especially during Corona or the COVID pandemic, have thought of a way of maybe lowering the amount of lease cars. So they are trying to find different solutions to let their employees travel. We have the CO2 goals in Paris from 2030. We want to lower as Europe and a lot of other countries. We want to lower the CO2 emissions. We see the rise of numbers of new mobility initiatives, shared cars, shared bikes, scooters, that are being placed within the larger cities in the Netherlands. And we see that in expanding the larger cities in the Netherlands, a lot of municipalities decided to give less room to cars. So for every apartment that is being sold in the Netherlands, only 0.2 cars can be parked inside of the garage. So less and less room for cars. So that's why we as TURNN are working on providing a way of traveling, business traveling, for this new mobility demand. Without having a car, people still need to travel, of course. So the mobility still needs to be available to employees of employers, and we are helping them out by creating a platform where all these new mobility types are in. We do that with a group of right now almost 50 employees. I think that let's say 70% of these employees are developers, and 30% are customer support, marketing, communication, etc. So that's our team, mainly young professionals, willing to work hard on getting sustainable mobility out. Our mission is, we believe in moving mobility towards a sustainable, flexible, and future-proof solution for everyone. Our vision is that we will become the most sustainable MaaS platform for employers and employees. And you can read our DNA here, based on everyone who's working with us. We already have quite some customers within this first 18 months we are active right now. And with these customers, we all believe in sustainable mobility. Together we try to get more flexible mobility, healthier employees, and keep the mobility affordable. These customers are or using our TURNN application, or they are using a white label version of our platform. What do we build? We build a employee app, which is being used by the employees. In this application, you can plan, book, and buy all your tickets. You can plan or book cars, scooters in cities, and use them, of course. And all these trips are being shown to the employer in their employer portal. So the employer has an overview of all the different mobility that is being used by his employees, and has a tool in hand to well, to better understand the mobility questions the employees have. So he can help the employees to travel smarter, in a more healthier way, and even have the opportunity to influence these mobility types. Well, to explain mobility as a service, in the Netherlands you have a lot of ways to travel, which all comes together into an individual who needs to, on a daily basis, needs to make up his mind how he wants to travel. Does he want to use his own car or his own bike? Does he use his lease car? Does he want to use the public transport? Is he going to use the shared assets, or take a cab, for example? This is, of course, quite handy, but it's also a lot of choices you need to make. And within these choices, you'll need a different application. You need to call for a taxi, for example. You need to use a chip card to use the public transport right now. Or get a long-term contract to get a lease car. Well, with Maas, you use one application, that is our platform, where all of these mobility types are being handled for you. And of course, not only for you, but also for your employer. So your employer will only get one invoice a month with all of your travels within this invoice. And for you as an employee, it's really easy to use it. And let's say on a Monday, take your own bike, but on a Wednesday, use the public transport because you're traveling to a big city, for example. And the last mile, take the taxi. That's the solution we want to offer to our users. We do that by using our own multi-model trip planner, and this trip planner can plan a public transport trip for you with all the trains, metros, and buses, depending on the city where you travel from and to. But also plan you a trip with public transport, and then from the station until your appointment, for example, use a taxi or another way to do your last mile. Shared bike. So if there's a shared bike available in the Netherlands, we'll show that to you, and if possible, we'll even open the lock for you, so you can use the bike right away. And the same thing, we do this for shared cars in different cities. We have a customer journey within the application. We start by asking you as a user what kind of traveler you are. So are you willing to, would you like to use the public transport only, or would you also consider last mile solutions, or even use a shared car, for example? So based on your own preferences, we'll show you the possibilities within, of course, within the margins that your employer sets you, because take into consideration that our application is used by employees, but the employer will pay for the trips, and the employer will then also decide on, okay, for traveling to your work, for example, we don't want you to take a taxi, but we want you to consider public transport or your lease car, for example. So that's something we we try to explain to the user and make as easy as possible to use. The benefits, of course, for the employers, you only have one mobility platform instead of multiple contracts with the public transport companies or with taxi companies, etc. It's all being managed by TURNN. We can offer modern mobility solutions. Sometimes when we have a new customer, we need to explain them the possibilities because they as an employer didn't understand that you could use a shared scooter, for example, for your last mile. For the employer, we make sure that the carbon footprint is being shown to you, and you can try to lower this by offering different mobility types to your workforce. And of course, all in all, we lower the administrative load for you as an employer. For an employee, we save time in your daily business travels, and this is because the app will help you to find all the possibilities, and we of course help you to, for example, lower your carbon footprint as an employee as well. So if that's important to you as an employee, we will help you to sometimes give you the advice, hey, take your bike because it's not that far, the weather is nice, and maybe you should use your bike today. This will make it more fun to travel sustainability, because what we do is we try to we not try to, but we even with our gamification, we'll help you to better understand what are your travels and how can you travel smarter, for example. And we'll show you all the new ways to travel. So if you go to a new city that you didn't visit before, because you have an appointment there with a new customer, for example, we'll show you that, hey, in this city they offer shared cars, for example, because maybe the company of Dirk Jan has just entered this city, and there are people who are offering their cars, for example. Well, that's something we could offer you during with our system. I want to show you, but I'm gonna try, and please let me know if the sound is there. Did you hear the sound? No, then I will try the next one, because I also added one from YouTube. I guess that will... Now it does?
No.
That's a shame. Then my plan C is here, and that's just going to YouTube and share that screen with you guys. 1 second, please. I will show you that one. And I hope that will work. And otherwise, I will give you guys the link to go to this screen yourself.
No, still doesn't work.
Still doesn't work.
No.
Then I'll do it in this sense. I'll stop sharing.
Thanks.
I will show you guys and share the... Can I do that? Yeah. That's the link. So if you want to find out, okay, how does this work for me, and what does it do for me as a employer or an employee, we made a short clip where we explain it on like a daily travel with 3 different employees in this short animation to tell you more about, okay, how would it work for me on a daily basis, and how would this smart traveling work through the TURNN application. That's my my short story about TURNN. Are there any questions which I can answer right away?
Yeah, I have a question, Davy.
Yeah.
What are you guys doing with TUI?
What are we guys doing? We are, for their employees, we are helping them to, for example, when they have a late flight and they come back to Schiphol Airport, it's quite a hassle for them to go by public transport. So they asked us, okay, could you provide us with your application and help our especially their flying employees to like in the middle of the night get home safely. And we can provide that to them by, for example, getting them a shared car from a company that provides the cars, or a taxi, for example. But when it is possible, they could also take a train when the night train, for example, is still driving. What they experience there as employees is that they after their work in the middle of the night, they don't want to go into the hassle of finding a solution for themselves. They just want to be, take it out of our hands. That's what we are doing for them.
Okay, cool. I have one more question for you. So on one end, there is like a super intuitive application, but on the other hand, you have so many different integrations that you need to develop. Can you shed a light on the complexity of that?
Yeah, it's really complex. So yes, as you mentioned, you need to have a super easy to use application, but that doesn't really show the amount of complexity that is in on the back end. Because to share that with you guys, for example, when we want to offer you a shared car from one of the larger shared car companies in the Netherlands. Of course, when we do that, we share this car with an employee of a company. So the complexity there is not only a technical complexity, but especially a complex what happens or who is responsible when this car is being, I don't know, when there's a dent in the door, for example, or someone has an accident with this car. That's where the complexity comes in. So most of the times the technical complexity is being handled sort of with a standardized API that is being used in the Netherlands. This is technical complex in that sense that everyone needs to use this standardized API, but there's a lot of different views on this. So that's in itself, it's quite a complex complex thing. But especially, I think the contracts with these expensive assets, that's quite a complex one for us, and also for the companies who want to offer their employees to use a shared car by Amber, for example. Or so how do you cope with with this complexity? That's for us the most complex, I think, even more complex than the whole technical technical part.
Managing the edge cases, I would say.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. All right, cool. I have one last question. I see one question in the Q&A, by the way, which is very interesting. It's about the consensus that innovations in mobility have a positive impact, but do you also see negative parts? I would like to reserve that question for the Q&A because we can use that as a central theme for the Q&A, because I also have some critical thoughts about it and questions. My last question to you, Davy, is the Dutch government is very actively promoting mobility as a service. How do you see their role?
It's in that sense, I think it's helpful in especially during the last year, where especially in the Netherlands, they promoted it quite actively But during the whole COVID pandemic, they of course also promoted non-traveling. So that's a bit, of course, that's was bound to happen. But what their influence is, it could be negative as well, because sometimes they prescribe how this mass world should work. So they have like a list of for every project you do within these boundaries of the government. You have a list of let's say 250 different stuff where your mass application should what it should contain. So every feature is already thought of, but that's thought from a let's say from someone who works at the municipality, for example.
Yeah,
They
so it's
thought
from
of
policy
something.
level.
Yeah, exactly. It's a bit like thinking something in a lab without going outside of this laboratory. And let's say it's different to think of something on forehand, and in real life, people tend to use it quite differently. So that's I think that's a bit different. That's a bit difficult, and sometimes you should let companies like TURNN, but also other companies, our competition maybe, let them figure out how it should work, and not set all these boundaries by the government.
Yeah, so let the market decide.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. Thank you very much, Devi.
Welcome.
Shall we go to the next speaker we can? We'll talk to you
Yes,
there later, Devi, in the
Yeah.
Q&A.
Thanks.
sure. Thank you very much, Mr. Devi. So let us turn the time over to Mr. Paul right now. Hello, Mr. Paul
Hi.
Roymans. Hi.
Hi. Nice to meet you all, and let's see if I can share the screen. Yeah. Does it work?
Yes, it's working.
Okay, perfect. Hi. My name is Paul Roymans. I will tell you a little bit about Tranzer. I have a background really in public transport. In the Netherlands in 1999, I started with the smart card system. It's a nationwide smart card system. You can compare it in Singapore to the EasyLink system, but then nationwide, so also including heavy rail. We copied more or less the whole system from Hong Kong, adapted it, changed it 180 degrees, and now we have a chip card system in the Netherlands. After that, I started my own company dealing with all the data. So that's an analytics firm I have with predictive stuff and that kind of theory. And now I'm really busy with Tranzer for the last 5 years. Tranzer, what we really aim at is we believe that cities are going to overflow in the future. Too many people, too crowded. So we really believe that combining all different kinds of mobility is a part of that future. And that customer can always see how expensive it's going to be, how crowded it's going to be, what the impact of their choice will be on society, on themselves, and that will be reflected all time through a mobile. So they always, if you look at your mobile, you can see what your impact will be and how long the journey will take. That means that we're going to get rid of smart card systems like the EasyLink card, because you only tap in and tap off. And in the end, you will see what the impact of the journey is. You need to know that upfront. So that's really important. That's the key of our system. And what we have done is we link all different technical systems to each other. It means that we deal with all the complexity of the different standards. We deal with all the ticket validation types. And then we have a really small layer in between all the different operators. And we're mainly focused at public transport operators. So for example, we integrate Arriva Ticketing or Deutsche Railways, Deutsche Bahn, SNCF, and others. but we also integrate shared mobility. But I must say that our main focus is public transport. And to give you a little bit of the complexity, for example, the Netherlands has 400 stations with Dutch railways. That seems complex, but if you look at the public transport in Amsterdam with only the subway system, that's around 2,400 stops. So that's really adding a lot of complexity with all different tariff tickets, tariff systems, different tariffs for different customers. And if we talk about Germany, Deutsche Bahn, for example, has over 6,000 stations, and you have yielded systems for the long distance. You have old systems, old train systems without any way of digital ticketing, and those systems are not going to be upgraded that easily to a new electronic system. So what we do is we make the ticket available through an API and integrate it. Our customers are all over Europe, and also the operators we integrate. So it means that in Holland we have almost 100% complete integration. Now we are the leading party in Germany. We have an office in Berlin. We just opening our office per the 1st of September in Paris. We connected already a lot of stuff in Italy, so like Trenitalia, Italo, the ATEC taxi system in Rome, etc., etc. I meant IT Taxi, and ATEC is the subway system and the public transport system in Rome. We are connecting all those different because we believe that the customer, depending on the app they want to use, must be able to connect. So for example, if you take an Uber and you want to take the train, we can offer it. So if you take an Uber the train, we will offer Uber the train ticket, and you only have one journey with Uber. Or if you want to use a KLM and you fly into Schiphol, then we can offer, KLM can offer you the tickets from Schiphol to Amsterdam, and we will create the QR code on the back, or the EMV, it means with the contactless payment or whatever, just to get you through the system. So we really believe that the customer will stay or will be in the app they prefer, and we offer them the ticket on the back. Some examples. This is a plan on the Netherlands. It's heavily used, mostly over 3 million queries a day. It's bigger than Google or Move It in the Netherlands. And the moment you buy a ticket, we offer that on the back, and we create a QR code, and we do the clearing and settlement towards the operator. So we fulfill the invoice with Dutch Railways, or with Amsterdam subway system, or with Brussels, or with Paris, or with Rome, or whatever. We mainly focus at Europe. And another example is, for example, you will know better if you go to one of the mini programs in WeChat. We will fulfill the whole ticketing on the back for one of the mini programs in WeChat. We are now already talking quite some time with Trip. We're probably going to integrate with them. So if you book a ticket with Trip, it means that we will fulfill the ticket and settle it with the different operators. I hope this is a little bit clear. I'm trying to speed up a little bit so we have some time for debate. And this is more or less what we are doing. So if you have any questions, just please drop me a note on my email about our system, what we can do, and how we build it. And let's see if I can skip. Yep. And stop sharing. Did I stop sharing now? No.
Not yet. Yeah, there we go.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks so much, Paul. Thanks also for joining so quickly. It's an honor to have you here, and great to see everything you're working on. A question that popped up my mind was, how do you deal with all these new forms of payments, like what you just showed me, like WeChat Pay, Alipay, Apple Pay, crypto? How do you deal with that?
It's a good question. What we see is we have it's complex, but everybody knows. What we do is we offer our customers, and we have many customers. We also working closely together with TURNN. But what we do is we have integration of all the ticketing validation techniques. That's one offering we do. And the other one is a payment gateway where we also offer our expertise on payments. And what we do, if, for example, I can show you, if you go to my wallet, it's live and ready. We are testing it now. One of the cards is a blank mobility pass, and you can travel through the whole of the world, and it's EMV. It's without Tranzer logo, so it means that we can offer you in Google Pay, Apple Pay, in the wallet, a card that's branded by the company that wants to travel. And we deal with all the transaction clearing and settlement with the different operators, and we make special deals. So it's EMV open, it's always possible. So we can offer that to our clients, but we also deal with a more hybrid system. It means that we make specific deals with the operators. Let's say in Singapore, we go to the PTA, the Public Transport Authority, and we make a deal that if some customers, some employees travel without the peak or on the shoulders of the peak or anything else, they get a kind of discount. It means that we can give that through our hybrid system with EMV or another system. So, and it's integrated in all those phones. It's clear?
All right, that's interesting. Yeah, so you leave it up to the client, basically, to the end user.
Normally the end user can choose, but sometimes, for example, if it's an employee, then you have a business EMV card that's in your wallet.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So now you mentioned the word wallet anyway. One of the questions is, did you ever consider using blockchain technology for your application, especially because all transactions are peer-to-peer? You would come up with a situation where where settlement becomes much easier.
Yes and no. Yeah, we considered it, and one of our MD in Germany.
Yeah. So it's working from home.
Our MD in Germany. Her husband is one of the founders of Ethereum, so we discussed it quite extensively. What the opportunities are of using blockchain technology. One reason for using blockchain is mostly if you don't know the other party and you don't know if you can trust it. And in this case, we know all the parties, so that solved that issue. The other issue we have with blockchain, it's quite expensive to do that per transaction. It will cost us around €5. So I don't know how much Singapore dollar that is, but that's quite expensive. So 7.5. So we have to do it differently. So it doesn't make sense for us to do so. What we have done to be 100% solid with our transactions, so we can guarantee not that all the transactions are 100% right, but we can track and trace all the transactions. We push all different points of the transactions to an external accountancy electronically. So that's being matched and tracked, and we only can change the transactions like blockchain. We can't change them hindwards, so backwards. So we only can change forwards. So we use some of the IDs, but we don't use blockchain because it's just too expensive and it doesn't add much in what we are doing.
Yeah, okay. So you implement the concept of a timestamp, basically.
Exactly. Yeah. And what we could do, what we discussed, is that we take some of the information and make a photo of a certain time, and then that's what we encrypt and put away in a blockchain for that time. But that doesn't really say much, you know. So
yeah. Of course, the costs issue is indeed a complex issue, which you might be able to solve if you build a dedicated blockchain only for the transactions within your ecosystem. But still, it's the more busy it gets, the more challenging it also will be.
The system has to run millions and millions of transactions a day, and at this moment we increase with 10% per month, so we're already doing millions and millions of transactions. So it means that the average company will get as a kickback fee from the operators around 2%, and we have to pay our staff and our organization and they pay everybody from it. it's not a lot of money. I think a lot of mass players will collapse in the coming year or months because they just don't make money.
Yeah, yeah, it's a complex world, of course, where the government again has a big role in determining how much money you can make. So I would like to ask the same question to you, Paul, that I asked to Devi. How do you see the role of the Dutch government? Because on one hand they are promoting mobility as a service quite a lot, but Devi was also critical on that role.
I'm very, it's that my question in Holland, I give you an example. In Holland, we have pilots. Davey know all about it. 7 means that we have 7 regions with mass pilots, 2 million per region, and 2 million spent on an app. It must be a brilliant app. But what do you want? What do you want to showcase? Do you want to show if you can build a brilliant app, or do you want to show that the rules are working? And we don't have any rules yet. And if you ask me, the involvement of the government normally doesn't help because they only make it complex. They add a lot of bureaucracy, and the standards we know now, let's say GTFS, a generic transport feed. In the early days, it was Google Transport Feed, but then it sounds so monopolistic. So that's why they created it or renamed it to generic. But I think big companies, or as we see it now, also we are still small, but we're creating more and more standards. I think that's the way forward. And I don't believe in one standard that's being created by a government because there is no sense of urgency or no real good business sense to keep it mean and lean. And that's one. Take, for example, Itso in the UK. It's some brilliant standards, but it's so heavy that it doesn't work. You're standing for ages at the gate. You have to wait 3 minutes to get through a gate if you're going by train. So it doesn't make sense because everybody says something about the standards.
Yeah. Yeah, okay, so it's surprising to me to hear that both you and Davey have a similar perspective than on the role of the government, where probably everything is from good intentions and probably many parts of your vision and the vision of the government will be similar, but then if you try to implement it from a policy perspective and then enforce businesses to adopt that, I can imagine indeed it becomes complex.
But Singapore is different. Asian region, I know from our company in Sydney, and we're doing quite some stuff in Singapore, as you know, but it's cultural driven. Holland, the Dutch don't trust the government. That's by default. So it's different than Singapore. I think Singapore, I'm sometimes jealous about how everything is organized in that country because it's a very governmental driven country and things seem to be very well. So it's
yeah, but the difference, of course, between the Netherlands and Singapore is that the organization of the government acts much more like a company itself. So the distance between what a company is and what a government is smaller, and maybe therefore they act much quicker.
Well, what we have done, maybe then I will shut up. What we have done in the Netherlands with the smart card is that we had 3 big organizations, Dutch Railways and 2 other public transport organizations, and we created the smart card, and that was the standard, and all the others could join, non-discriminatory. So they could join against the same standard and rulings, and that really helped because it made it much more easier in decision making to go forward. And I think that's mostly how it needs to be done.
Yeah. Yeah, okay, so companies take the initiative and then the government supports and decides. Yeah, all right, cool. Thank you very much, Paul. I would like to go to the general Q&A session. Vika.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Paul and Johan for the questions and for the answers. And so let's jump up to the questions in the Q&A sessions. The first question is, how do you see the mobility industry, especially in Asia, in the next 10 years? What is the difference between Singapore and Indonesia?
Maybe this is a good question for Dirk Jan.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I would say, so how the market will change. One thing is Asia is not one geography which is all the same, right? So different parts in Asia, they have are at a different stage of development. And so that means you cannot really give one answer, I would think, for everything. But I would say maybe from one extreme, which would be Singapore in that sense, is that it's always very proactive. What I mentioned from the mobility space, the part where I am part of, is we see that shared mobility is important. We see that governments try to reduce car ownership. They want to reduce congestion. That's a main concern, and that same concern is there in Singapore, as there is in Jakarta, as there is in Sydney or in Shanghai. It's the same thing everywhere. Now, what you do see in some countries like Singapore, they try to experiment with certain things like autonomous vehicles. Electric vehicles are also still lagging, but I would say if they want to push it, they can push it very quickly, and then people will adopt it. But what we see is that right now we are working together with the government in Singapore, with the Land Transport Authority. We see that these guys are really keen to find out about new business models, to see if we can improve mobility, but always look at what is the impact on congestion. So I think that is a very important thing. I think for the cities around in more developing or emerging Asia, things just take longer. I would say, because what you will see, and that's definitely my expectation, is that the middle class is upcoming. More and more people get more money to spend. People want to use that to get to own certain things still, even though that the percentage of ownership maybe goes down. But just because you have so many people, it's very hard to reduce congestion. So I think what you will see in certain countries is that doing more with public transport is a good thing, and that will happen. But that will not resolve the full thing, and there we hope that we can contribute.
Okay, thank you very much. I do have a general question to you, but then also to the other speakers, because you mentioned inequality a lot and the rise of the middle class in upcoming economies. So there's one question about that. There's a consensus that innovations in mobility have a positive impact on the environment, but do you have like what are the negative impacts of all the innovations that we all of each other are working on together, and how can we maybe mitigate these impacts?
Yeah, so one thing that two very large companies in Southeast Asia have done, Grab and Gojek, they have made it much more affordable and convenient for people to travel around. Now you can imagine if more people are able to access them and they're going to travel around, then more people will travel. So one problem from these type of companies like Uber or Grab or Gojek is that we also, and I'm saying we, that means those ride-hailing companies are basically saying that they reduce congestion, but that's not really true, right? Because people are just using it, right? So that is great in a way, but that means that people that were before not using a car or anything like that, currently they are, and therefore more people take part in it, and that could have a negative impact in a way. And there are also many positive impacts of those kind of business models, but that would be one negative impact.
There's indeed some research on that as well, where they compare congestion in cities before Uber and after Uber, and then you see that car ownership and congestion actually goes up instead of going down.
Yeah, and I think that's correct, and that is therefore what you see is governments try to reduce that, and you see all different types of measures, like in Beijing or in Shanghai or in China. In some cities, they've said we only want the license plate numbers with an odd number at the end, they can drive on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and with an even one, you can drive on the other ones. Now, that is a nice thing of, yeah, that is great intention. But what happened is that people started to buy two cars. Right?
Yeah. That's insane. Yeah.
So sometimes you don't know if you have an innovation, what the real impact will be. So that's what we need to see.
Jochen, maybe to react to this one, what you see is that some cities are doing quite well with this. I think the platforms we are delivering or the application in the front, they are just mean. I really believe, and I see, for example, if you look at London or Antwerp, there you see that normally the mayor or somebody close to the mayor, that's because they are responsible for mobility in the city and to keep the city flowing, that they are taking measures that has a higher level and better impact. And for example, in London, they are getting rid of subscriptions, monthly, annual, and all you can eat subscriptions, they are getting rid of. So you do pay as you go. I think that's the first step. And it means that you're starting to pay for every ride. And what they're doing now is that in mass transit, they are starting to do mass yielding. It means that for the peak, you pay a little bit more than off peak or in the shoulders. And in Antwerp, they are saying to micromobility and to Uber, if you want to have access to this city, you need to allow that everybody can integrate your API. So Uber, if you don't let other integrate your API, you're not allowed with Uber services in Antwerp. And the other thing they're saying to micromobility is if you don't reach a certain percentage of ridership, you're kicked out of the city or you have to decrease your assets. And what I expect, they are going to take influence also on the pricing. So they're not going to set the absolute margin, but they are going to demand a certain percentage of ridership. And that will have an effect on the price. So it will increase. And I really believe that price will be one of the main driving forces for people to use it less or more. And this is really where the government comes in to set those prices. Because otherwise...
I also think that, that the bandwidth of a price will be set higher, for example, for older vehicles, for example.
Yes, exactly. I think this is really where the government will come in and they say, okay, we have too much vehicles, so the price per journey has to increase. Doesn't mean they tax it heavier, they could do it, or they say the license will be more expensive to do your services in this city, and especially during peak, so they make it more flexible. So this is what I see happening all around, because we don't have enough capacity in the city. And if it's too cheap and everybody keeps traveling, that's not durable, that won't last.
Yeah, maybe they can even make the tax part of the fee dynamic instead of having the fee that the companies have to make, because
and I think this
just margin to make.
Our systems will make that possible. In the 100 years ago, we started to sell an annual pass because that's really easy. You had one transaction and people could travel whatever they want. And now it becomes much more flexible. So I really believe what Uber introduced with flexible pricing, that will be the future, but government will have a heavy say in it, how much the increase will be by taxes or licenses or ridership percentage, etc.
Yeah, that's for all public transport, Paul.
Also for public transport, public shared driving, but also even for example, parking. They could determine what the license will be for parking. They could determine what, how many green zones we have, with stops. So the government has a key role in this one. It's really up in the, from policy into implementation of incentive, and then stop. Don't do the technical integration. Don't do standardization. Just create the rules of the game and stop playing the game yourself.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So indeed, it's you're promoting a laissez-faire policy where the role of the government is to create like a level playing field, and that's it.
Yeah, and set the rules. Yeah, the incentive that people, and I think Antwerp is doing really well. They kicked out several micromobility scooters. They said you're only allowed if you don't if you have a rider percentage like this, and if you don't, then you have to decrease your number of fleet in the city. And you have to integrate into others. So you can't monopolize the whole city.
Yeah, you saw the
What do
same
you
thing
think? I mean,
with the shared bikes in Amsterdam, for example. There were,
yes,
I think 100,000 overnight. There were like 100,000 Chinese bikes in Amsterdam, and as Paul mentioned, there isn't room for 100,000 extra bikes in Amsterdam. So the whole city was crowded with orange or green bikes. And it was almost free to use them. So yes, it's easier to use, and for some people who have lesser to spend, they could use it. But it took away the whole point of using a bike, I think, and just created a unlivable city. So luckily, also there they were kicked out by the government.
yeah, I think that it was a matter of weeks even when they that they have been kicked out.
I think you see the
I'm now
same thing happening again with scooters. So the scooters now
the
do the same
e-scooters
thing.
are e-scooters are of course one of the examples where I think it's developed with a good intention to have more people not taking cars. But then we have two other downsides. The first downside is that the e-scooter competes with a bike, and when you're using a bike, you're using your body to go from point A to B, so it's more healthy.
Yeah.
But of course, many of these e-scooters are they just run for 400 or 500 kilometers, and then that's it. Right? And then you just have to throw them away.
Yeah.
So that's
Another negative.
Terrible for the environment.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, indeed. And then there's also what I think we see in China is that there's a huge demand of electricity, but you also see that they built like coal power plants in Myanmar, for example, to support that extra demand for electricity. So then maybe the cities in one place are livable, but they just outsource their pollution. So yeah, there are all kinds of perverse effects, but in general, of course, I think the development is very positive.
Yeah.
Vika, do we have other questions you would like to ask?
Yes, we still have many. Let's see, there's from Andreas Uditama. What do you think are the solutions to reduce freight costs, reduce transport costs, and cut CO2 emissions?
Right, who's going to get that?
I don't have much to do with freight. Freight of people, maybe. But...
No, yeah.
I think the COVID pandemic showed us a lot of the solution there. Working from home when working when you need to work is one of the big solutions, I believe. So only travel when you really need to travel. The greenest travel is the one you don't do.
Maybe I can add to this one is that I think what you're saying, Davy, but what I also see is in the Netherlands, and maybe we're not always the same as all the other countries, but what you see is that an employee or somebody has a travel budget, let's say 2,000 euros, and they can choose the preferred mode of transport. Public transport, if they use it a lot, they can, in the summer, they can hire a bigger car to go on holidays. But what I also see happening is that the CO2 emission kilograms is going to be in kind of budget also in the future. So for example, the employee gets 2,000 euros to travel in combination with, let's say, 20,000 kilograms of CO2.
Yeah.
And if he's flying, then he consumes the budget very quickly. And if he's using more public transport or an electrical car or electrical Uber, then it's going down. So it's not only going to be the most convenient, but it's going to be cost, speed, CO2. Those are the three really important, and then convenience. I think those are the four. That's also what's being delivered on our API. and not many customers ask for the CO2 output with us. But I believe in the near future, when you're a higher level in Maslow, the country like Singapore, the Netherlands, Europe, then this is really important. And I believe in Myanmar, it's less important because they are just surviving as a country. So it's different. And we can't push our norms into that country because we have done the same some time ago. So we must be very careful.
Yeah, the change could be a lot quicker there because the technology is cheaper.
Present, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly on the same page, Paul.
Thank you.
Yeah,
for
very
your
interesting that you mentioned the CO2 part. I think you can, of course, like gamify. You can add gamification elements to any kind of travel app, where you can even, if you use a very a mode of mobility which is not so which is not impacting the environment at all, you can even get CO2 points.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. Earn it by cycling, for example.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much for your answers. And there's also questions especially for Mr. Dikian. From UC Pratama, there's some couple of questions. The first is, what is Drivelah strategies to encourage people to list their car on the platform? And the second is, who set the price on the website? If it was a car owner set the price, how Drivelah approach cost battles or price war between the car owner?
Yeah, so first of all, yeah, how do we get car owners on the platform? You need to convince them, right? So in the end, it's not easy. When we started, everybody said Singapore is the most expensive country in the world for cars. So why would you ever share it? But of course, there's the other side of the coin, is that because it's very expensive per month, maybe if you rent it out sometimes, you can earn some money. So in the end, I think the most important thing is that you convince people that it's safe, right? So we need to show it's safe. We work together with the government. We work together with insurance companies. We show that so people can believe us in a way. And so it's about building trust. So I think that is the number one. And the second thing is you need to show people that they can earn money, right? And we just need to show that. And once people have, and what we see is where the biggest trick is, you need to make people not only list their car, but to give them the first trip. They need to experience it. When they've experienced it, then they will continue doing it. So that is number one. Who controls the price? The car owners, they set the price. It's a transparent marketplace. So yes, there will be competition, and we don't mind that. We actually recommend prices to people. Still, people are in control of their own price, unless it's a very, and I mean, still they can put a very high price. They can put $1,000 per day for a car. But what we do is we show it on the 10th page of, nobody will find that car, right? Because then we don't give them out. So in the end, what we try to do is people control the cars, they control the prices, they control all the rules that they have, but we show the most attractive cars to people that want to rent.
Nice. Thank you very much for your answer. So let's jump into another questions from Ranin Raini. What are the challenges in developing smart mobility solutions on a city or country level?
I think this is especially interesting for Devi, because he has been working on the, for example, mass pilots.
I think the let's say the main challenge in that is what you're trying to do with this with mass is, of course, combining all of the solutions into one easy to use application. The first challenge there is that no user is the same. So no use case is the same. If you work for company A or for company B, you probably have a completely different, or your manager or boss, or however you want to call him, your employer will have a completely different idea on how he or she wants you to travel. So building a solution that that can tap into to all these employers and their ideas of traveling. I think that is challenge number one. And then when you know what the customer wants, or what the employers want, or companies who want to use your mass application want, then the next challenge is to get all these technical solutions together. So exactly what Paul described, Tranzer is doing, this layer of combining all of these different solutions. I think that's quite a big technical task to get them all in line, to work properly together. To give you just an example, when we plan with our planner, we plan a trip from let's say Amsterdam to a city of Eindhoven, for example, which is 1.5 hours away from Amsterdam. If I'm planning this trip right now, I can plan the train because I know when the train will go and arrive in Eindhoven. But then from Eindhoven, I probably won't have a meeting on Eindhoven station. I will need to go for the last mile. And for this last mile, I want to be able, for example, to use a scooter, a shared scooter. This shared scooter is, I can check the availability for this scooter right now, or maybe in a couple of minutes, and I can do a reservation for probably around 15 minutes for this scooter, but I will arrive in Eindhoven in 1.5 hours. So I need to be able to reserve a scooter in 1.5 hours. Well, the company that is trying to lend me this scooter won't give me the possibility to do a reservation in 1.5 hours, because he can rent it out to someone else probably meanwhile. So the problem here is, if you want to really do a mass trip, mobility as a service, so one big journey with multiple mobility types within this journey, the biggest challenge is to get them all in line. So get this scooter in an hour or two, and be able to be sure that I will be able to use this scooter in an hour. Because if I don't, and if we as a mass provider can't give you this scooter, and you already travel to Eindhoven for 1.5 hours by train, you will be really disappointed when there is no possibility there to follow your route to your I don't know, to your appointment, for example, which is really important because it's part of your job, and your manager will be quite mad when you will arrive 30 minutes late to your appointment. And this is all coming back to us as a mass provider, because we as mass providers say, no, we will take care of your trip. So that is right now the main challenge, getting all this, or let's call it a guarantee to be on time on your appointment. That's
Yeah.
something you want to offer as a mass provider, and that's really difficult.
Yeah, and then there are maybe two possibilities. You can add self-learning components to make predictions on how likely it is that a vehicle will be available, but
Yeah.
that, of course, it becomes very complex. And the other approach is that you make like some kind of auction on the moment, but
And it's
then
really
again,
difficult, and
make
I'm
predictions when you,
only describing the let's say the best case scenario, because what
yeah,
happens when the train is late for 10 minutes, for example?
yeah. Then
Or
again, you have cases. Yeah,
exactly. So that
yeah,
is really complicated in the world of mass, because everyone is saying that can be the solution. Mass will be the
yeah,
solution. But integrating this complete journey, that I think that is the biggest challenge we have right now. And
yeah,
you can't fail it. If you fail, mass fails. That's then
yeah.
the whole idea of mass isn't working.
Okay. Thank you very much. I think we got all questions, right, Rika?
Right, but I think it looks like we have already done it for 1.5 hours.
Yeah.
And I think, is there anything else you wanted to cover before we wrap up?
No, I think it was a great session. I don't know if one of the speakers still has something they would like to share.
Thank you very much, Johan Wika, for inviting me and to share about DriveLab. For people that live in Singapore, as I mentioned, just try it out. We're happy to show you the experience of DriveLab.
Great, thank you to all our speakers for your great presentations and the good sessions, and also for all the attendees. We appreciate you being here, and we will also share the recorded version in the next few days. For the next webinar, we will invite 3 promising startups to share their new solutions and entrepreneurial story. So thanks again for joining us today, and we will see you next time.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye bye.
Rika, for everything. Thank you.
Thank you.